Minutes before this coffee starts to kick in.
Hey, no problem, man. I can cut out stuff if necessary, you know. But I'm gonna try to keep it as raw as possible, right?
Yeah.
So hey everyone, this is the first edition of this podcast. I even have no idea how to call it yet. Yeah, thanks for partaking on this giant experiment. Also, if you unless you've been living like under, I don't know, like a giant photoscanned rock for the past 3 years, you should know who Ian is.
Sorry, you're glitching real bad. As soon as you started, I've gotten like 2 frames of you. Okay, you're back.
All right.
Sorry about that. I was making a face because suddenly I just completely lost you, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah, we'll see how this turns out, man. No worries. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. No, I'm sorry I interrupted. I just wanted to make sure before we got into it if there was like I guess there's just a planet in between us, isn't there?
There is a full planet.
And there's just stuff can happen. Okay. I won't point out if stuff gets wonky.
Yeah, don't worry. How are you doing, man?
But I'm doing good.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good.
I'm really excited to get to talk to you.
Yeah, well, same. I've been ever since I found out about those lazy tutorials.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
Those are really, especially like if you know a little bit about Blender, they spark so many ideas and about approaches and everything. It's just crazy.
Do you use Blender?
Oh,
yeah, you do, of course. You've sent me your files.
Yeah, I've been using
your
only
design
Blender.
has like your designs have this like kind of classic feeling to them that for some reason makes me feel you'd be using like I don't know, 3D Studio Max or like I had one of the more like traditional. I don't even know why I feel that way, but it's
well, no.
You feel like one of the old. Your designs feel like the stuff I would have looked at when I was like in high school, just being like, "Oh my god, look at this!" Like in the. Give me time. Give me a moment. My coffee will kick in.
Yeah, no worries, man. No worries. I've the thing like what I think is really crazy about the stuff that you do in general is that people would consider you know to be like a VFX guy or a 3D guy. But to be honest, I think you're more like you're a designer and a storyteller that uses 3D, that uses Blender. You know, just like it's the 3D is not the end of the process for you, right? Like it's just a tool to tell your story, which is absolutely insane.
It's it was very much a byproduct of trying to make films real cheap. It's the design part is interesting though, because I never liked my designs because I'd look at my stuff and I'd be like, here's a cube and like some cylinders and like this is just the most basic thing that you would come up with if you had to like design a thing. And I actively tried to be a little bit more specific about it. But like your stuff is just absolutely. I have your poster on the wall of the swoopy RV.
Seriously.
Yeah. No, I look. It's literally like in just.
That.
Yeah, it's so good. With like the spheres on it.
Yeah.
And I got it specifically just like as a reminder to like, look, you can before you model a thing, just try to actually design it. Look at like the reference and like the. Because what I love about that one is it feels like that kind of airstreamy, swooped, aerodynamic feeling of the future from like the 50s or whatever, but like pushed beyond that. And so it's this idea of looking back at the past that was looking towards the future and like pushing it in further in like kind of both directions, and I love it.
Oh man, that's really cool to hear, man. I didn't even know that you. I knew that I had one cell, but I don't know. I don't even know if they let you see who.
Oh, it was me. Yeah,
dude, that is absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
you can see my messy wall.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool.
No, I love it. Was that a full model?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, except for the curtains, I didn't figure out how to do cloth simulation until I like 4 years after or something. But that was actually the first 3D, like fully 3D model that I made, and I spent way too much time on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I've worked.
But does it have it like an interior?
No, I've only drawn that out at some point.
Oh, I love these fake advertisements. Those are so good.
That's like an easy trick though. Like that you do that as well, right? You tell a
Yeah,
lot of
just
stories
like an overlay.
Using advertisements and you know, like the Dynamo episode. There's all sorts of like little story elements tucked away.
But it isn't just an overlay. There's you've got just the color schemes and all of that.
That's just levels in Photoshop, man. That's just levels.
No. Like just the font coloring and the font decisions and stuff. It's all really solid. That's something I'd love to pick your brain about. Is just like, how do you? Because I'm afraid of fonts and text and stuff in general. Whatever I do, I feel like it looks like it's like a 2004 Photoshop sci-fi or something. And so anything that can like feel in the world while also feeling kind of like adult is I'm always very jealous.
Oh man, that's actually I have this trick that I'm not really proud about, where I just look on let's say like Pinterest or something, and just look up like a piece of vintage graphic design.
Yeah.
And then pretty much do like a one-on-one copy, but just change the content and you know, and change the 3D render behind it, and you're good to go, because pretty much all of that is not copyright. Well, not copyrighted in the sense that you can actually steal. Like you can't steal. No one's gonna say like, "Hey, I know where you placed that sentence." I did that as well 50 years ago. So
Jackenheimer's Miracle Tonic from 1937 wants to have a word with you.
Yeah.
But what's cool about that is once you go through that process, you then like kind of just have those details like in your like you can kind of whip them out, and they're just like you've absorbed them a little bit.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but I don't think that's that different from what you do, right? You've got this almost like this classic cyberpunky. It's not what I like about what you do, man. It's there's a lot of cyberpunk elements to it, to put a name on it, but it's not the generic cyberpunk that I'm used to seeing. It's not the same Blade Runner painting done 70 times all over.
I have many opinions on that. Yeah, it's just I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of just I'm into cyberpunk. I finally just read the Sprawl trilogy by William Gibson, which was a blast, like last month. But just so much of that aesthetic, it's like also the line between like aesthetic and just the genre of cyberpunk has been really. I get so many messages where people are like, I want to do cyberpunk like renders. Can you do a tutorial for like cyberpunk? And I'm like, just Google. Like it's all just like an alley with neon and like air conditioning and kind of stuff. And I'm like, you have to throw something else random in there, otherwise it's just another part of this like miasma.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think if you just take cyberpunk and for 2 decades and you get a little bit just like, I need to put something else in here because this has stopped piquing my imagination, and you put anything in there and I think suddenly it's kind of fun.
Yeah, you mean like a giant fighting crab or something?
Like a giant crab! Honestly, a giant anything.
A giant, you mean like, well, spiders up and down all over,
But that's already like one of the things is like if you're trying to make a specific genre or whatever thing, and your only reference is other examples of stuff in that genre, like if you're trying to make sci-fi art and you're only looking at other sci-fi art, you're gonna get that it's, I don't know, as opposed to, some 1937 Miracle Cure whatever poster, which is gonna just open things up, and that's I think that's huge.
Yeah, but that's absolutely true. I did this little we had a workshop with One Pixel Brush in Prague about half a year ago or something, and I've talked about that actually, like where especially if you go on sites like ArtStation, how it's almost like this big incest pool of people copying one another, and just sort of as a joke, I started with that Mars rover from The Martian. Mm-hmm. And then I found pretty much all the derivatives of that on ArtStation, and there were about like 250 similar-ish designs, and then I compiled them just to kind of make a point. And I think that's exactly what you mean, right? It's if you just take the same cyberpunk or the same whatever, if you just stay on ArtStation and you just look around for inspiration, it's gonna be very one-dimensional, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I love a lot of my inspiration folders are like old film photos and stuff, just because like there's for a while I was going through this period, I still am kind of, where I was just obsessed with that idea of like tangibility, because we're in this weird era where there's so much CG that it almost doesn't matter if something's photoreal or not.
Yeah.
Like Marvel's kind of made like all of the CG stuff pretty realistic, but in doing so they've also made like all the real stuff kind of like more CG, and so there's this kind of middle ground that we've been really acclimated to.
It feels very stylistic, right?
Yeah, but it also means like the whole point isn't just to be realistic, it's to kind of try to match that weird kind of heightened CG reality type state.
Yeah. But you still do like physical sets in some parts, right?
I try to. I just did a gig with this group, and it was kind of a work for trade deal where I made them a little teaser, and in exchange they're going to be helping me do a proper shoot on like a boat, like this kind of military boat.
Whoa.
That I'm hoping I can then like extend and track out. But I want to have all of that really textural stuff kind of going on at the base, so then I can hopefully like scan the boat and turn it into a big robot boat or whatever. But that's the hope. In the next couple of months, there's going to be like 30, pirate guys on a boat, and we'll be just shooting stuff in real life. I'm very excited.
Really, really awesome. That is really awesome. But it does take quite some extra effort to actually like go outside and leave your desk and put people in costumes and getting all the gear set up and everything. Like I'm actually wondering like how the hell do you manage your time, man? With all the 3D modeling and it's. Do you have like 6 hours extra every day or something, or that we don't have?
I don't. No, I just have bad time management, and then that like I don't really have a good work-life balance. I'm just kind of working a lot, and I don't even realize it because I don't know. I'm in this situation where I'm working in my office, and then like my house is right next to it, and so I'm just. If I'm not like eating or cleaning, I'm just kind of out here working, and I'm just like that's my life. But I'm trying to figure out how to break that up a little bit into like I have off time and on time, and we'll see. That'll probably affect my productivity, but I think in terms of like growing up and being an adult and existing in the world with other people, it's probably a good decision.
Yeah, but I'm kind of with you there, to be honest, man. But except for like for me, there's just kids in between there as well. But that's it. Like that's my life is kids managing a home and working, and then kids.
How many kids do you have?
2.
Oh, that's so great. Now. How old are they?
One's 10 months now. Nearly 11 actually, and the other one just turned 3.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah, that is very exciting. But that does put like a very there's like a lot of on the spot planning that goes on when you have a kid. It's like I'm gonna do some work this evening, and then they go like no you're not. So that's why I was late also, by the way.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But I do know what you mean. Like it's hard to have off time, right? To actually take time off and not do anything work related, because I don't know how it works with you, but like as soon as I get like this snippet of an idea, I have to do it. I'm like it's almost beyond myself,
It's like, or sketching it out, or like modeling it in my head, or like sometimes it's different techniques. We're thinking it through, like, oh, could I like use these tools in this way so that like you could use a cloth sim to like, and until I get out to a computer and actually like can test it out to be like, does this thing actually work?
Yeah.
I'm just obsessed with it, and I'm trying to explain it to like Caitlin, my fiance, and she's like, okay, and I'm like, just I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yeah. I have we have this concept as well in our marriage where it's like I'm just gonna go up 2 minutes to put another render on, and then she already knows what time it is.
I'll see you in 2 hours.
Yeah.
I've started. I can do a screen access from my phone. I can control my computer, which
That's
is
very
great
unhealthy.
because I hate doing it. And so if I can start a render, fix a render. I can check to make sure it's not rendering like blank frames or something like that, and fix it from my phone. But like, I don't want to do it for longer than 30 seconds because I don't know. I hate having to do. I can type like 130 words per minute. I'm so slow with my thumbs, and I'm always trying to do swipe and stuff. And so the fact that everything shifted to like phone input, I'm just like, I'm already an old man. I'm like, give me 500 buttons on a keyboard, please.
But it's funny that you say that though, because in a lot of designs you actually go for the chunky buttons and the physical joysticks and the wires, and you're not like the slick touchscreen kind of guy, I think, right?
No.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fun, or I don't know. Anytime you can kind of layer stuff up. Like, I've never really done holograms, or I haven't done holograms in a long time, just because, again, it kind of fell in that, like, it's been done type thing, and I couldn't think of a way to do it that wasn't just, like, sci-fi holograms, I guess. I was talking with my friend Bryce, and he was like, you should just do it in, like, an aquarium of goo. There can only be, like, holograms if they're in goo. And I was like, that's the most exciting idea I've ever heard. Goo-grams. But the idea of, like, wrapping them over, like, an already very tangible interface, like, at some point they were, like, retrofit. I got the opportunity a couple months ago to go in and photo scan a bunch of old World War II bombers.
Oh, yeah,
and it was like
that. Yeah.
And, I'm drunk on that aesthetic right now. But the idea of, like, wrapping some of those modules in, like, little holographic doodads or something, just, like, mixing them together, has me very excited.
Yeah, I've seen some of those scans. You posted them on Instagram as well.
And you have a lot of that kind of, or you're maybe even more World War One.
I guess it's somewhere. I think that the aesthetic I love the most is like whatever goes on with the old Cold War era. I think like between the 1950s and 1970s.
Oh.
There's some really cool stuff that came from that era. Some really weird stuff, like where the world was sort of trying to out-engineer each other. Like, you had American and Russian, American, Russian, American, and there was so crazy ideas in that era.
I'm looking at your Jeep UFO right now, which is one of my favorite. I am more jealous of your designs than literally I am of anybody's.
Seriously,
and the whole.
man.
No, seriously. I was so excited you asked me to be on here. Like your RV, was that like the Winnebago spaceship things?
Yeah.
So, like, I remember watching Spaceballs and watching that fly around, and to me that's like equally cool to the Millennium Falcon. I'm like, there's just something about that that's like, oh, that's awesome.
It's just so mundane, right? An RV is well, it's exciting if you're in it and if you can travel, but the concept of an RV is so down to earth, which makes it funny to not have it to be down to earth, you know, to actually have them up in the air and everything. And
playing around, I think I like seeing how you kind of place these vehicles in different situations that kind of take us on like a little road trip, and that's, I don't know if you're doing that on purpose, but like when you have the same vehicles around, it always makes you imagine that they're like the same that we're kind of like on a little journey with them. And I wonder if you kind of think about it the same. That was my favorite thing about the Millennium Falcon, was like the fact you could see their beds and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
it's basically a giant RV, huh?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I was wanting more of that. I'm like, have more bedtime on the Millennium Falcon. Have them eating more snacks. I think that's great. The fact there's so much of where they're ripping off panels and like climbing into it and stuff, and it felt so different than like just a set where they built something in a box somewhere. It's like, no, you can rip up the floor. You can go through all the doors. My biggest dream in life, in fact, when I was a little kid, like in junior high, I had this dream that I went into the backyard and somebody had built a spaceship. Like, I'd been making a spaceship out of like foam and stuff. Like, oh yeah, this will be the spaceship for the movie. And somebody built it in real life, and they were like, yeah, we made it for the movie. I'm like, I don't understand the logistics of that, but that's amazing. And that's like still like my biggest dream in the world, is like, could there ever be a situation where we walk out, or I walk out and there's like the actual like spaceship? It'll happen someday.
I don't know to which extent this is true, but I've heard or saw in a documentary that for the first Alien, that the interior of the Nostromo, that it was built like one giant interior set, so that once the actors they put on the suits, and once they walked in,
Really?
they were in. Like all the rooms were connected, and there were hallways in between. So it wasn't like this set is on one floor and this set is like in a different hall, and it was just like one giant set. So when they were in the spaceship, they were in. Everything was
so
lit
cool.
and fog, and wouldn't you just want to stay there for like a couple of days, like just imagining that you're like the space trucker?
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, Firefly, or Serenity, that was built in 2 sets, I guess, one for each floor, which I always thought was ludicrously cool. The fact they actually built a full size, or like I guess 90% size Millennium Falcon that like Chewie's running all over, and what's his name, Harrison Ford is like screaming and hitting things with a hammer. I'm like, that is one of the coolest. That whole movie is the coolest to me, like almost just because of that scene. I love it.
Yeah, man, there's like the specific amount of interaction that you can't do with like a CG set, I guess.
Yeah.
Like banging things with a hammer, like try and make that believable, It's
one of my least favorite things in movies, when somebody's supposed to be like hitting something with a hammer, or like, and you can see him pulling it, because it's so, you can't hide that if you're like pulling the punch back.
No,
you have to be punching something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a cool job, though, for people starting out in Hollywood.
You have to get hit by the hammer today. So what were some of your early influences?
For me, I've been massively influenced by like the 90s cartoons, if you think about stuff like Hey Arnold and everything, and that in combination with stuff like Star Wars and
Hey Arnold meets Star Wars.
Yeah, well, I would say like the typical, people don't like that these days anymore, but if you say like the typical American culture from the late 80s, early 90s, if you combine that with sci-fi, I think I've watched a lot of TV as a kid, like The Simpsons were that's where I learned English,
Oh yeah.
not in school, but from watching The Simpsons. Onto such a point where my wife's family, part of it, they're from the north of England, and so they have this really full of character accent from northern England, and for them I sound very, very American.
Really?
I had to explain them. So we get English in school, but nobody learns it from school. We all learn it from television, and that's pretty much all American. So.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I've been influenced a lot by American TV shows, and also like the old classic films, like stuff like The Hunt for Red October, or just the classic 90s action films, the early 90s, man. Or Terminator, Terminator 1 and 2. We don't talk about the rest, it's just 1 and 2. No, actually,
it isn't even like people have disdain for them, really. It's just like, I think they've made 3 since I have last looked at them.
Yeah. There's been some weird stuff happening.
It's a lot of... Hey, you see this movie, Matrix Resurrection? Wow, so original. So cool to see this brand new movie, not based off of any existing franchise. Can you imagine if somebody just saw that and they didn't even know about the Matrix? And it was weird. It's fine. I'll be interested in you.
I haven't seen it yet, though, but hearing people talk about it doesn't get me in the mood to watch it. So yeah.
It's worth seeing. Do you know anything like about it at all?
No.
It basically looks you dead in the eye and screams, "Hey, I shouldn't exist. I don't want to exist." And then goes on to be the most mediocre version of itself it can like possibly be, in a way that's like very surreal to see in a big movie, and it's worth it just for like kind of that
is weird,
bizarre meta experience. Yeah, it's interesting.
and do you think it's like one specific thing that creates that, or is it like all those micro decisions coming together or something, or
I don't know. So the beginning is very obviously, literally, it's the film looking at you and being like, I don't want to exist. Like, they made me do this. To a degree that you will not believe. But, like, the rest of it, the fact that, like, I don't know. The original films were, like, they're some of my favorites just because from a design standpoint, they are incredible. And there's love put into it to the level of obsession, which is, like, what I want. Like, somebody lost their mind, like, making... Somebody somewhere went insane doing some aspect of this film, because, like, you can't have something like that, I feel, without that. And in this one, there is no... You can tell it was just... It's just a bunch of jobs for people, and it was probably a much healthier process or something. But, yeah, it was kind of weird to just have this franchise that was so... instructive in developing my own kind of like style, because you could tell it was a huge influence on me. And 20 years later, it's like everything's just kind of it's still a lot of work, it's still a lot of good ideas and stuff, but it wasn't that like, geez Louise.
I did hear this, now that you say it. I think there was this concept on YouTube, like a guy was analyzing like films from the 90s. And there's basically like this concept called the cubicle film, which is very, very particular about the 90s. And this analogy was basically that this was the first decennia that there wasn't any huge major conflict in the modern world, which basically resulted in people having very safe and very secure lives, hence working in cubicles. And so like that Fight Club is one of those as well, you know. It's basically like the escape from the cubicle, and the Matrix is that as well. And there's Office Space, you know, that weird stoner comedy film, to some degree. But I thought it was interesting in the way that how films coming out are directly connected to like what's going on in the world at that point. And so perhaps, I don't know, like I could see it happening, that if you try to do whatever happened in the 90s but you bring it out now, it just doesn't resonate with whatever zeitgeist, you know, the population has at that point. I don't know, that's just, I don't know.
No, and that's where to the new Matrix's credit, basically, like the fact that even before the movie started, it was like it was some new Marvel guy. He's a vampire. He's evil, but he's good. And it's like, okay. And there was some new like sci-fi thing. And it was like, we've seen this. There was some other sequel to like every single thing was a sequel or another like whatever. Yeah. And you could tell it wasn't like anybody was passionate about making this thing, or maybe somebody got into it. But it's like they're movies that exist first and foremost because somebody decided it would make more money to make this film than to not, and so they checked the right boxes and the people came together and made the thing. And then like the Matrix started, and it basically was like, yeah, we're exactly that. They decided there was still money left in this franchise, and so they're going for it. I was on a set once, the biggest set I was ever on. They flew me down to LA to do some visual effects supervisor stuff. And it was so surreal because everybody there was incredibly... Up in Seattle, there aren't a lot of gigs, and so everybody's always kind of like flexing a little bit. They all have to like prove themselves because they're on set for like, you know, one of the only gigs they'll be on that year. Not always, but like there's usually some kind of ego energy. Down there, it's all just a day job. There's like your professionalism is basically defined by like, can you get your job done without it being an issue, and do you get along well with other people? But it was so wild to be on the biggest set I've ever been on and realize not a single person actually cared about the project. Like
right.
Nobody, not even like the artists involved. It was like a music video thing. Everybody was just like kind of like doing it because it was the job. And seeing that many resources like being directed at a thing that nobody actually cared about, I thought it's so weird that like just the machine can produce this media that because it decided to.
That is, if you think about it, it's very crazy, you know. Especially if you consider that for some people, working there would be the absolute biggest dream of their entire lives.
Oh yeah.
But you normalize it, you know. I bet most people working there will probably also at some point. Nobody runs into the movie industry by accident. Well, at least like there must be like a very small percentage. So it's weird, like how you normalize it, how it becomes just another job, and then you get this project that you don't really care about, and then, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've had some client stuff at some point that I didn't really care about all that much, and you just have to drag yourself through it, and it's not fair to both.
You've cared about client work?
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. I have to say that, or else I don't get any work anymore. No, that's not true. That's not true. I've had some very awesome stuff to work on, and some really cool projects. But it's just sometimes you say yes to something, and if you don't like really feel, I don't know. It's like it stays very one-dimensional if you don't care about it, and perhaps that's what happens on a larger scale to some degree, you know.
No, that makes sense. And yeah, I've had many projects that I enjoy, but also many that I just like working on my own stuff. I very much like working on my own stuff. So anything that keeps me from that, I'm just like the whole time I'm very like, all right, but I kind of want to. I do gigs so that I could make money, so that I could not do gigs, and then I would like try to live as cheaply as possible, like eating toast and like lentils, so that I could like. If I'm like, all right, this tastes bad, but it means I get like 3 more days of doing whatever I want to do, and that was kind of my life for 15 years.
That is a very interesting concept, though, you know, because I think it's almost like this mandatory thing that you have to work for money all the time, and whenever you take a significant amount of work off, even if it's to work on your own, not even that, like even if it's just because you need some time off from life, it's like very looked down upon, you know. If you go on a traditional job interview and they see like a hiatus of 6 months in your work experience, they go like, what were you doing? Nothing. And I go like, okay.
What type of
giant X?
You do design work for video games?
Yeah, mostly.
At least I'm seeing Back for Blood.
I work with 1-pixel brush mainly at this point, and that's almost all games. Well, we did some music videos as well, and some TV series.
Is that Coldplay like the Coldplay?
The Coldplay, yeah.
You did a Coldplay? That's cool.
Yeah, I did a Coldplay.
Yeah. I like the little spaceship. That's cool.
But that was actually that was quite a weird experience, because it's we often have code names for projects. Like, it's not the actual name, it's just like a Shady also makes stuff up, some weird stuff sometimes. And I got this brief in for that spaceship thing, and it was a very limited amount of budget. I think we got about 12 hours to do it.
Oh wow.
And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. But there was nothing referring to Coldplay, and I didn't pay attention to, because I'm sure if I looked through the other works I would have probably figured that out, but I just thought like a standalone spaceship design, sure. And I actually finished it in like 7 hours or something with all the client reviews. And then a few weeks later, we were like, hey man, here's your ship in the new Coldplay video. And I was like, I am so gonna exploit this.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I like the design.
It's
kind of
pretty much what they requested, though. It's like, I think it looks like a fish, you know, like those puffer fish.
Oh yeah. Kind of reminds me of the Heart of Gold from that Hitchhiker's Guide.
Oh yeah. I've seen that. Yeah.
I remember being disappointed at the time when I was a kid and that came out, just because like I'd always pictured the ship really cool, and they just kind of had it as like a ball, and I was like, come on, you could do better than a ball. And then Marvin the android comes out, and he's just a big white ball. I'm like, you guys, come on, there's more than big white balls. But I love all of it now in retrospect. That's one of those movies where every time I go back, I'm like, ooh, I do that a lot, actually. I just rewatched, I love Cowboy Bebop. Did you ever see that one?
No.
90s
I know
anime.
it, but I haven't seen it, no.
It's really good. They finally made like a live action version, and it's just, it's any well done animation is not going to benefit from being translated into like live action, because they already did it in like the ideal medium. And so unless if you translate it to be kind of something else, and so it was originally was kind of lackluster, but then just going through and watching it, trying to understand why I felt it was lackluster, I kept noticing all of these things, and like by the end I was like, no, they put in so much love into this thing.
Yeah.
And it's happened a few times recently where I'm just like, why isn't this doing it for me? And just the process of looking at that, you see just like, oh, okay. This is actually, people put so much work into everything.
Yeah, I think it's massively underrated. Like for me, I don't know why, but I have a hard time looking at anime. But it's just a personal, I don't know why. I there's like this stylistic border between me and I don't know. But I have massive amounts of respect for it, and there's some of the coolest designs like and sci-fi influences come from the anime world. So yeah.
There's also a lot of very bad anime.
Yeah, I can imagine that though. Yeah. Yeah.
They make so much of it. I had a cousin who used to kind of keep up with it, and I would be like, all right, so of all of the stuff that came out, what's the one like show this season that I should check out? And he would kind of point me in the direction of like one of the good ones. But it also just gets weird. Like it costs as much to draw a weird interdimensional like squid school as it does to draw like a regular school. And so it's not, like, from a production standpoint, it's not that much more difficult to make wacky Squid School show than, just regular kids. And so I think animation's fun in that capacity, because it's like...
It is, yeah.
Let your imagination get insane.
Yeah, there's also, like, this... Because your brain knows it's not real, you get away with so much more, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think for some... reason that might also be the case why a lot of those animation films turn into live action sometimes have a hard time conveying the right thing, because they used to be drawn, so your brain knows it's drawn, it's not real, so you get like this massive amount of freedom to squash and stretch, and the animation can be very stylistic, but once you turn it into live action, like the talking animals become like, it's just a lion doing like...
You lose so much by being live action. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, especially with those iconic films.
There was that period over the last 4 or 5 years where Disney was just like, they figured out they'd make a certain number of $100 million every time they made like a live action version, and which isn't even live. It's still like animated. It's just like animated in, I don't know, these are not particularly new hot takes, but it is along the vein of movies that exist because some studio decided they should exist, not because anybody creatively was like, I just really need to make The Lion King, but using giant photo scans now.
Yeah.
No, that's...
Yeah.
Hundreds, thousands of people did some of the best work I've ever seen in my entire life making that film happen. Massive respect. But also...
Yeah, well, visually, it's absolutely stunning.
But in its soul,
it's just this transfer from stylistic animation to live action. There's just like this massive gap you need to fill, and this thing that you lose as well. Like if you look at some Disney animation, it's just so. Just the animation in itself is stylistic, like the way that they time everything, like how someone walks and talks and how the face moves and everything. It's just, there's so much nuance in it, so much personal character.
2D animation is a miracle to me. I don't understand how that's done. Even stop motion. Like I can kind of animate in 3D because I'll just keep rewatching it and I'll just keep kind of like sculpting. I'll just get rid of anything that doesn't really work iteratively over and over, but if I just had to do it right the first way through, like, no, not at all. My first attempt is always so bad. I actually just rendered an animation last night that's just supposed to be a guy riding on a bike. He's not doing it, it's on a motorbike. He's just sitting there, and it's the worst animation. He looks like he's just a cube, like, going down the road. I'm like, how am I bad at this?
I think we need to see that at some point.
I can it's not even like funnily bad. It's just kind of, you're like, yeah, that's not a great dude. I am happy though because I made I'm going back to a film I shot 4 or 5 years ago with some friends out in the desert, and we kind of just made it for fun. But I was sitting there and I realized I basically finished the film, and I was just like sitting on a finished film. And the fun part of being a filmmaker is actually releasing this stuff, but 95% of my time is spent working on things I never actually end up releasing because they take so long that I'm like, I made this 7 years ago. I'm kind of embarrassed to release it. So realizing I was actually sitting on top of like a near finished film. We met this last December. It was my friends Bo and Johnny Valencia, and we filmed the rest of it. And now I'm kind of going back to this old project that hasn't aged too much, but I'm adding a bunch of wacky CG stuff on top of it, and kind of just like, I don't know, it's fun to combine the best CG I can do with like something we kind of filmed on a whim like a few years ago, and like that mismatch to me is almost part of the energy. There's something about something being kind of silly and being done just for fun, but they're also like going at it pretty hard, like trying to make it as good as they can, which I always think is kind of interesting.
And
so hopefully we do that.
Can you already tell something what it's about, or what can we expect, or what will be like the CG element of it, or is it still super secret?
Oh no, I mean I post little clips and stuff about it. It's about so originally it was from a different episode which we never ended up releasing. There were two guys who one pulled out a guitar and he's like, hey, I got this guitar from like a guitar smuggler, and the other guy's like, what, Pete? Oh, I love Pete. Oh yeah, I also love Pete. Pete's the best. And this third guy pops in and is like, why don't you guys marry each other over your love of Pete? And it's just this weird like bit about Pete. And then like 2 episodes later we thought it'd be funny if there was like the legend of Pete, and it was just the whole story of how Pete ended up getting this guitar, and it's this huge over the top like story, because it was a backstory that like literally nobody would have asked for. But I like the idea that the show itself kind of had this like self-contained infatuation with this character for no reason. We never finished that original episode, but we did finish the Pete episode, and so that's what, of all of the random things we filmed, and maybe because it was so random, like it felt like the stakes were a little bit lower, and it was kind of just a very wacky episode. We could kind of like just throw stuff at the wall and be okay with it. But that's the episode of all of the stuff we filmed that's actually done. So that's the plot. I'm still wondering if I want to like create a Pete tie-in somewhere else, because it works better as a punchline. I still have that idea of like, it's a web series. You know, you can zoom in on any background character and like maybe get an episode about that. Have you seen Adventure Time?
A few episodes, but not that much.
They got to a point later on in their run where they would just have they would like, there's one where they follow an abominable snowman, and he's just hiding. He's going through his day. I think he's trying to take care of like a little ice dog or something. And in the background, you see Finn and like the Ice King having all these epic battles and stuff going on. But it's always just like in the background. You kind of see this other plot happening, but the main plot is like this character just kind of like trying to live his quiet life. And I think that type of stuff is fun.
It's almost like a self-aware. It's like breaking the fourth wall style, where you become. When you specifically not focus on the interesting part, but more on the, well, not interesting, on like the more flamboyant stuff, and then focus more on the mundane. It's like where stuff becomes self-aware, you know, like when people watch in the camera, look into the lens or something, or talk to the camera or something, And I think it's really cool when you combine that with CG stuff, you know. That's like, CG stuff, especially sci-fi, tends to be so serious all the time. So bleak, and
I wish they would do that with Star Wars. Like, give me the people living in the weird like space RV or something that isn't, they don't have to, it's not the same you got to blow up the Death Star thing.
That's actually like one of my motivations for the Flying RV project, Marv. Was the whole idea of doing like colorful cyberpunk or like redneck sci-fi. You know, it's not super serious and like military based. It's all just like regular life and colorful life, and stuff's good. You know, life is good. Not as in like almost. I teach a class in Belgium.
Oh, really?
I also do CGMA, but I used to get so many projects in from students, and it's like, the world has gone through a big disaster. Humanity has to survive in a post-apocalyptical. It's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, here we go. You know,
And I always wonder, like, what about that captures the imagination? Because I know it does, and I feel like I was there too at one point. Just like the idea of like, yeah, the apocalypse, kind of everything's all six-string samurai. This is cool. But now I'm like, it feels so. Like, I think of the Walking Dead, or I guess Walking Dead's even, I have no idea what they're doing with the Walking Dead, but like any zombie thing.
Yeah.
I've had friends in Seattle who are like, Ian, I'm making like a zombie movie. And I'm like, okay, what's it about? And they're like, well, you know, there's an outbreak, right? And it makes people like go nuts, and they're trying to like eat people, and if they bite you, you become like one of them, but there's like some survivors, and then like they have to shoot, but then one of them gets bit, and they turn and they try to bite the other. I'm like, that's the genre, man. What's the movie? And like, I don't know, I feel like I've kind of, maybe it's not fair, but I've kind of have that thought about a lot of the apocalypse. Like, you have to be exploring some idea that you're passionate about. Just the idea of, this is an apocalypse movie isn't. I had one friend who was like, no, but wait, Ian, in this one, the zombies are psychic. And I was like, okay.
I don't know, man. That could go somewhere, but I totally know.
It could.
It's come on, yeah. That's the plot of every zombie film, basically. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm curmudgeon-y. I'm just having a blast looking at all of your Marv stuff. I really do love the colors.
Oh man, that's really awesome to hear. I had this massive fallout with the project, like falling out of love with it for I think the past year for some reason.
Oh really?
So, and I tried to get into it, but I could. That's why I'm doing like super bleak, super heavy realistic sci-fi at this moment, just to do something else.
I love that that's your range.
But I'm definitely coming back to Marv at some point or another. Yeah, absolutely. I have this massive plan, which will probably like work out for 10%, but you know, where I would actually release five books, like 5 art books, and every book would sort of cover one location in that world, and every location would have something like a special tie with the flight technology that they're using, so it all, like, in the end it all ties together in some way.
That's
but
cool.
We'll see. I think that's gonna be for retirement or something once I get if I ever get there, you know. We'll see. Oh,
I think you definitely should. And any, like, I know. Did you ever read the Dinotopia books?
Yeah,
did you ever see those?
Yeah. Massive fan. Yeah.
I love those, and the fact that it was like, you could tell the biggest passion is just, he just wanted to draw this dinosaur world. But he'd have like little sketches and things, and like they was supposed to be like the explorer was making the sketches, but it's also like, that's just your world building sketches. I love the purity of the creative passion behind that.
Yeah. But James Gurney is an absolute legend.
That's my other wall.
Yeah, there we go. That's great.
Dinotopia poster. But any book like that, or like the Stalinhag, you know, books are absolutely intoxicating. I did
feel for a long time, I felt like just running behind Stalinhag, going like, what? Yeah, I'm gonna do that too now. Yeah. Okay, so what's next? You know, because it's also retro, and it's also, there's some painterly aspect to it and everything. So, but I think in the more. Sorry.
Oh no.
No, that's all right. You just did like this weird lag thing. Yeah. No, I think the more recent stuff I did for that project, that it kind of breaks away from the Stalinhag copy, to at least to an extent, you know, because it's more stylized and everything, and So yeah.
And I don't even get a huge, like, Stalinhog vibe from yours. There's people where you can definitely tell they saw Stalinhog stuff and they're like, all right, now I'm going to just basically do that. But there's also other elements of Stalinhog which I feel are kind of like global, and I think maybe he encapsulated that style so well that he's just like, when people are also trying to channel that idea of like kind of mixing nostalgia and rural and sci-fi, or like driving down the road looking out at wheat fields and being like, what if there was something kind of out there or whatever. Yeah. Like I feel like a lot of that has just kind of been, he encapsulates that incredibly. But I feel like some of those same influences would have just been kind of like inevitable.
I guess you're right. Like he already made it. You know, he already did that nostalgia, looking out of the car window when you were a kid vibe. So, and everybody is just running behind him. Like, oh, so I want to catch up.
I thought it was interesting how familiar, like, early 90s, 80s, was he Sweden?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think he's Swedish, yeah.
Feels so much just like the suburbs that I grew up with, and like all the same cars and all that stuff.
Yeah,
but no,
I
think you
works,
should. That's totally super works.
It works so well, yeah.
I'm excited. You should totally do a book. Sorry, I just have my other monitor here, and I've just been going through your art station this whole time, just keeping me jazzed. I've realized every once in a while there's a new thing that gets me really excited about the whole process, and recently I'm discovering I've never gone as far with colors as I wanted. I was doing some post work on a picture, and I just pushed some colors around almost like randomly, and I just liked the picture so much. It had this like freshness and life to it that nothing I'd done had, and I was like, oh, I've got this tiny little box where I make my colors, and like even just putting some bold lighting into the thing like helps so much. And your stuff is just like, the colors you have going on, and especially the Marv stuff, are just like where it's just that teal, the one where it's hovering over the guys in front of the red forest. Those colors together are so good. And like the just kind of the pink in the highlights, I love it.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Like the room you have to play, you can play around with when you do stylized work in terms of color is just crazy.
Well, and that's where I see something like that, and I'm like, I want to bring that type of look into live action so bad. That kind of just like it's all kind of feels real, but it's still that like hyper illustrative type design, but bringing it all together. That would be a challenge, and it's the reason I'm very much into green screen right now, because I'm like, it's easier to bring a single person into that environment than to try to like build a whole set. That kind of, I'm much better at lighting in CG than I am in real life, basically.
It is tricky though in real life, right? It's you kind of think in CG, and then you start to move around physical lights, and it's like, oh yeah, I thought it was going to do this thing. Why is it not stopping here? You know, why is the light traveling this far? Come on, it doesn't do that in Blender.
Although, with the new, I don't know, with cycles and rendering, and like the fact it is actually physically based light bounces and all of that, the overlap is ludicrous, and I can't believe the paradigm shift that's happened the past few years. Of it used to be you do your work, you'd hit render, and then you kind of wait to see what you had. Like you couldn't see what your lighting was doing as you were setting it up. There had to be this delay. And the complete change in workflow and the way I think about stuff, from the fact that now you can actually be seeing in real time the changes that you're making. Yeah. And like the what's that done to materials, and finding happy accidents, and just like speeding up the entire process. I feel like we're just working in this magical zone now. It's really fun.
And do you think though that I sometimes think, because we're working pretty much real time, like even in cycles now with like Cycles X and then the RTX 3090, Cycles almost looks like Eevee in some cases. I mean, in terms of speed, in terms of speed, the quality is obviously better. But don't you think though that in some cases, like we've turned into just moving stuff around constantly instead of like really thinking about where to move stuff, because it's gonna be in the render. You just like have this infinite. Should it be over here or over there? Perhaps over here. So I find myself sometimes doing not doing like very productive work, but just fiddling so much. It's like this endless.
I guess so.
Yeah.
That's the process where I always feel like when you are just moving things around and you find those kind of happy accidents that end up kind of like defining the image, and it was like, I just happened to move this
that is true, though.
thing there once.
That is true, though. Yeah.
But I could very much imagine that like the immediacy of everything now definitely means that we lost some stuff. For me, CG is so much, it's about play. It's like getting all the pieces together and seeing kind of what you can do. So anything that kind of helps make that process more fluid and enjoyable usually translates to, I feel, the work being representing that, exhibiting that in some way at the end.
Yeah. Like, because I was actually thinking, like, in terms of design in your case, because you use a lot of photo scan stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no, I was just wondering, because there's one particular thing that you did that always, that's sort of like a thing that I try to reach when I'm doing realistic stuff, is where you had this cylinder shaped noodle bar thing, like up in the air.
Oh yeah.
With people standing all around. I'm wondering, in a case like this, do you actually like think about how it's all like, oh yeah, perhaps some guy built this little shack over there up on top, or do you just like start to move around until it? Do you work story, like, do you design story based, or is it more like the happy accident?
Usually, yeah. Every time I'm making something, like, I could tell you, as I know you could too, because of like the way your designs work. If you lift up the panel, I know how that panel was made, and I know what's under it. I like to think like elements of design, and I'm usually like, if I'm putting set decoration up around, I'm usually thinking about the person who put that up.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, like that design in specifically, I don't really remember making it. I think that was more of a demo. Like I made it specifically to be a showcase because I was really excited about the people. And so I went, okay, I want this to do good on Instagram, so I'm going to make it a vertical composition that kind of just like will make people stop and be like, oh, look at that. Where if you want things to do good on Instagram, you make them vertical.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's a different game, right, than ArtStation or anything, yeah.
But because of that, like, it did make me think in terms of, I love vertical compositions. I love the idea of people being able to go up and down in that verticality, and it's, I've been making all of these really wide format movies, and I'm so frustrated with it now because it means you can only do stuff with people going left and right, and so now
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
I'm doing full frame everything.
Yeah. But it's with that thing in particular, the vertical thing. I don't know. To me, when I look at that, there's just so many, I think, subconscious decisions that you made, and where you place things and everything. But yeah, I know. I was just wondering, like, do you make a sketch, or like do you try to just crawl into the shoes of whoever's? And that's like a literally translated expression from Dutch. Like, do you try to stand in someone else's shoes and?
Yeah. Kind of both. I've found I always wanted to be the person. I mean, I do have lots of sketchbooks, and I love the idea. Like, I went to Pixar once, and they have all the concept art up in their lobby, and I was like, oh, that's so cool to see all this concept art. But for me, it's almost faster to just like mock things up in 3D, because you can copy and paste and rotate and scale and pull things out, and it's like, as opposed to like having to translate it into a 2D outline with a pencil on a page. Like, my brain likes to think in 3D, and so by the time I have to translate that into 2D, like I've already designed it in my head, and so it's like feels like a redundant process. And so I don't do so many sketches, but and also what I do like about CG is that you can just kind of doodle around, just extrude random stuff, and then you just start refining those doodles, just extruded stuff. You start beveling and kind of like massaging it. So a lot of times stuff that I thought was just going to be an early experiment ends up just kind of like folding into the. The other thing is the best designs to me, like if something that's really well engineered, like if you take apart some like this guy, if you took this apart, you would see this crazy injection molded plastic and screw holes where like a little circuit board was specifically designed, and like everything fits together so well. And it's an iterative design process where they couldn't fit something in, so they take a notch away, and so like everything fits so good. And that's so hard to do in a vacuum, where if you're just like, like he ends up always kind of looking cartoony because you need to have that forced iteration. And so sometimes working in 3D that way, where you actually try to figure stuff out, or like, especially with like animating mechanisms with IK or whatever, you go, this bit intersects this, and so you have to actually like move it so it doesn't do that. And the end result is you end up with something that actually feels engineered,
very real,
because you went through that same process, even if you aren't particularly an engineer. I made a little fold-out chair recently.
I've seen that. Yeah,
and
that was, man. I was so jealous when I saw that.
I would have been too, because I didn't. It looked way better than it should have. It was just me kind of like doing some basic IK stuff. It's just a few kind of nested IK chains, and then just every time something would intersect, I'd kind of like try to tweak it. And I looked at the end result, and I'm like, this looks like somebody knew what they were doing. I just made it so the stuff didn't intersect. But it's because it did go through that. I had to, as I'd watch the animation, just keep kind of tweaking stuff.
Yeah,
so that's what I tried to learn.
I guess though, like when you include animation, I guess in some sense you actually go through that trial and error that real engineers have to go through as well. Yeah, I should learn that. Oh,
I'd love to see some of your stuff. Have you ever animated your stuff?
No. I've been afraid of rigging for the longest time. Mind you, though, I was afraid of texturing for so long as well. You were actually the guy that pushed me over the edge to start thinking about texturing. Yeah. I watched that world building in Blender presentation that you did.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw you just taking an image and just like a barbarian just extruding things from that image. And what I liked about that the most is how much that would piss off actual 3D like the classic 3D modeler.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're like, no, I must model first, and then I model the details, and then I go for the text. But you're like, you start with the texture, then that just blew my mind, because it's so efficient.
Yeah, I don't do as much of that anymore because it does kind of have some of its limitations. But
yeah, but still,
But no, you would. So the thing about rigging, because I put it off for years and years and years too. I only recently got into it, and like IK chains and constraints and all of that stuff that's like it's literally the most efficient process of handing the work to the computer, and you're basically saying like, here, you take care of this. And so it's a way of amping up the efficiency so much. And like once I like actually being able to design little IK mechanisms and things like that. Have you seen? I did a little tutorial like for IK stuff. It was like I think the last lazy tutorial I did.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
And like it's literally just
amazing,
like
by the way, 2
hotkeys, and you can do IK chains, and that was what changed everything for me. Like I've got mocap stuff. I got a little Rococo suit, and so I'll do some sort of things like that. But then I'll turn the legs into IK chains, so that I can or I can put the hands into IK so they're on a bike and they're still being like a person, but like it just gives you flexibility to be able to like push and pull things anywhere. It's really, really fun.
I think it's really cool to see like how you it's almost like you simplify things into the bare essence of what that thing has to be, if that makes any sense. Also, like how I saw you modeling that robot arm on top of that IK chain.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just like you figure out the chain first, and I guess that's like where those two hotkeys come in. And then you first think about the chain, like how it moves, you know, and how everything compresses and everything, and then you just start modeling on top, and that's where you know, that to me, like classic Ian Hubert stuff comes in. Yeah,
and it helps when you're making it for yourself, because that means like you're not beholden to any pre-existing design. Like again, with that, like I've got the IK chain, and so I'm like, okay, I just have to model the arm so that it doesn't violate the rules of this IK chain. But also, if it does, you just tweak the IK chain, and that like that iterative process always ends up in the final result kind of working out.
So you keep moving back and forth, basically.
But even that model, like I always want there to be something about it. For every project, there has to be something that like I find exciting about it. Otherwise, like I don't do it because it's boring. And I think the one for that one was I was very excited to just be well, first there was rigging because I had mocap data, but I realized if I just attached like with an IK chain one end to like the shoulder and the other to the hand, I could bypass the actual arm, and I would just have my own crazy IK like arm solution. So that was one bit. And materials wise, I love like taking apart old like 1950s vacuums and just seeing the way these cast pieces of like I've got just piles of weird metal and stuff back here, just so that I can kind of like geek out over the design language and like the ways they're manufactured. Like you can see this big bulky seam that goes all the way around it. Like it's hard to make big metal pieces. Like, and look at these ridges going on in there.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff.
But I love stuff like that as well. Like where sort of the aesthetic flows from however like the function dictates it to be.
Mm-hmm.
That really, like, to put it bluntly, like that really gets me off, you know.
Yeah.
When I start to because those bombers that you scanned, like I don't know if you saw, like there's this weird little ball shaped thing in the front of those bomber cockpits. That's actually
the
like
bomb
the
sight?
northern bomb site.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you see the coffee machine that I did?
No.
I turned one of those bomb sites into a coffee machine, and it was I loved it so much. Yeah.
Hold on, let me check that out.
Yeah, I scanned like 4 of those bombs. I didn't get good scans of any of them because they're very complex, and it was very dark in the bomber, and I could only really get to one side of it. But
yeah. Oh, there it is.
But yeah, that's just one of those bomb sites.
Oh man, that is so good.
And so right now I'm just like, I love that aesthetic and those materials, kind of that like just textured metal. I'd love to be able to actually replicate that feeling.
That is very cool. I wouldn't even consider like making a coffee machine out of it.
Well, I wasn't thinking
I love that chair as well, man.
It started with just wanting to make the coffee machine, and I was like, what do I have? And then I was like, oh, I have the bomb sight. Okay, it's literally just stuck there with a couple other little scans kind of on top, and I made coffee come out, and it's like, oh, it's a coffee machine now. Also, that coffee was just like a cylinder with a normal map on it, like spinning with a glass shader on it. And I was thinking I'd have to do all this additional work of like adding a fluid sim or, you know, drops and stuff, but it's literally just a little spinning cylinder. I was very happy.
That's exactly what I meant like a couple of minutes earlier. What I mean is like you have a tendency, I think, of seeing what the bare minimum essence of something is and how you can visualize that in the quickest way possible, because a lot of people overthink it to such an extreme degree where they would do like, I have to go into Houdini now and do the simulations, and then they do like a week worth of simulations, and you're like, nah.
It's the biggest.
Just move the normal map.
it's the biggest issue I think with CG is it makes it you feel as if you have to like simulate real life, but like coming at it from more of like an art perspective. Like you think of those Star Wars matte paintings or whatever, where they're just giving it's the impression where it's like, okay, what are you actually, you know, it's coffee, it's just a brown thing going there in the gap between the two, and so that's all you have to make is a little gap. Where I feel like the more traditional art background, or the more you can kind of visualize the final picture and realize I'm not trying to make everything in that picture, I'm trying to make that picture. And I used to actually cut too many corners because I would always just be like making exactly for what was in the picture, and I found I actually enjoyed the flexibility of spending a little bit more time on every asset, and so I could reuse them, and like, I don't know, the more love you put into something, the more it's evident. Actually, the thing that helped my art the most over the past few years was with the lazy tutorials. Suddenly, everything I posted got like thousands of views, and just the knowledge of that, of like, oh, everything I now, it just meant that I stopped and I like actually went through stuff with a fine, like, should I fix this stuff? And now the answer was like, yeah. Whereas before I would be like, oh, who cares?
Who cares?
And so in that weird way, like, social media actually made me focus a little bit more, and I think it helped me kind of up my game a little bit. If you look at my stuff from like 5 years ago, I cut so many corners.
Yeah, but I do understand what you mean, you know. But I think that's a really strong point, though, because a lot of people are stuck in like this. I have to create how the real thing actually looks and works, instead of creating the impression. It's almost like thinking, how would they create it on a film set, instead of like how would the actual thing go? Because I used to try that as well, you know, like try to make a landscape in 3D. And the soon you realize, like, if you want to have a mountain in the image actually be the size of a real mountain compared to your character, it just does not translate well.
Except that now we can, which is what's so crazy. Like, I have all those same instincts from back in the day. But like the other day, I just took some photo scans. So when we filmed the Pete episode, we got all this drone footage. And I've been going through that drone footage and plugging it into like Reality Capture and Polycam to get 3D scans out, and just using those as blocks. And so like I realized my entire scene is actually like 3 kilometers, and then I put some actual, you know, the little guys doing a thing here, and I have actual life-size mountains in the background, and then I throw some volumetric haze over the whole thing, and like it's just doing it for real. I scattered, you know, 2,000 sagebrush across the desert, and my computer doesn't even blink. The realization that like I can actually have just 5 million blades of grass, and the computer's like, yeah, I can do that. And like, we have to fake it, and it's like, no, you don't. You just have the grass now. I still haven't wrapped my head around it really. Because I got started in the late 90s, where it's like you had to be precious with every single polygon, because you'd run into that poly count, and your whole thing would chug so quick. And so now that isn't really a thing, I don't know. I'm like, oh, should my cylinder have 8 sides or 10? Can I spring for 10 here? And it's like, computer does not mind.
Dude, yeah. yeah, but I know what you mean, though. It's like, I think it's still a very, very healthy way of thinking, you know, like, how can I make it look like the real thing? But still, like a photo scan. What I actually wondered about, and I wanted to ask you this, like, also with the bomber scans.
Yeah.
I have this very neurotic, that's why I can't sculpt in 3D as well. Like, I have this neurotic tendency, if I see a cube, it has to just have the 4 vertices and the 4 vertices. But when you photo scan something, or when you sculpt a cube, it's actually consisting out of millions or thousands of vertices.
Yeah.
So when you have like a little turning knob, it's not proper vertices making the turning knob. It's just like a blob creating, which the object is in real life as well. Like, do you have troubles with that sometimes when you?
Yes, I do. Not technically,
that's
really.
Reassuring.
I went through.
Well, no, I just mean like the accepting. In your
no, that's yes, emotionally yes.
Yeah.
Like I tried almost too hard to optimize everything. Like I'd rebake everything down and reduce the poly count, you know, to something pretty small, to the point where it's like I'd look at it in the renders and I could see the polygons, and like that's as it should be. Except I never actually reached a point where my computer was even chugging. Like I was doing all of this just because I felt like I had to, and like now recently, I'm like, all right, I'll try to keep my assets around 300,000 polygons, which to me is an absolutely ludicrously huge number, but I haven't actually had any issues with that. And I'm loading in giant video textures and stuff. I do have a 3090, which means, you know, it's like I'm in a good place, and it has great VRAM, so I can just like bring in 4K video stuff and like mix and mash all of that, and computer's fine. But yeah, that was a slow learning process of like, yeah, you can just have a giant blob of polygons and it's fine. Especially like the new, you know, obviously Unreal crazy sub whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even, that stuff's crazy.
Yeah. No, talking about computers too, like I have the 3090 now as well.
Nice.
But I actually I come from the GTX 9060. 960.
Did you go straight from one to the other?
Yeah.
Wow.
I did. I actually ordered a 3080 when the RTX 30 series came out, and then I waited for that a year, and then the company I bought it from was just like, yeah, nope, the it's canceled now. And I went like, what do you mean it's canceled? Yeah, the one you ordered, they stopped making it, so we're just gonna refund your money. That was during like the big shortage.
Oh, yeah.
And then I got the opportunity to buy like the Founders Edition, and I got that within a week at the original price. And so I jumped from the GTX 960 to the 3090, which was, well, I guess it's like from having a little boat
huge.
to going like to a starship.
Oh, that had to have changed so much.
Yeah,
that's the one. I do so much rendering that like that's the one I always feel like buying the new version, like anything that helps me render faster is probably going to save me money in the long run, just because so much of my life is like waiting for renders.
Yeah.
So I treat myself. But that must have been like, what was that like? Plugging that in.
Surreal. Absolutely surreal. And I even bought an entirely new computer a few months before, but without a new GPU, because you just couldn't get those.
Mm-hmm.
So I just bought a very, very powerful CPU to sort of cover for the lack of a good GPU. So now I have both, which is even cooler, you know.
Cool. Oh, that's very good.
It was such a massive improvement, and it's also, if you just think about like how quickly your brain makes creative decisions and how mind-blowingly frustrating it is that the computer is actually the one determining your speed.
Mm-hmm.
That you can't just do like, yeah, I want that, so let's do that. But getting there actually took so much longer than it actually should, just because of your computer, which is really weird.
No, I agree. Have you rendered with volumetrics yet at all?
Yeah.
I love. For me, that's one of the biggest changes in the past. Like, the air itself scatters stuff. Things feel so much more real to me. I can't believe we can do it. I thought that was still like 8 years off.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it's there. Yeah. And then with Cycles X, it even renders so much quicker.
Bananas.
Absolutely, yeah. I recently did a comparison, so a render that used with the old computer and with the previous versions of Blender, a render that would take me 5 to 6 hours, it pulls it off now in 2 minutes.
That's the difference?
That's the difference.
You went from 5 to 6 hours to oh wow.
To 2 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, I'm very happy for you.
I am as well, actually. Yeah.
I have guilt. I'm like working with like a 3090 when that's not where everyone's at. I feel guilty, just because it feels like it's like I don't know. It's representative of where, you know, everybody's going to be in the near future. But I feel like I'm like cheating, because it's just so. It lets you work differently, having that immediate feedback.
It actually does.
Oh
it's
wow, I
like
love your no-fly zone picture.
Oh yeah.
That's so much creativity. That's so good.
There's actually story behind that. I'm not going to like fully unveil it. You'll have to buy the book.
I'm excited
in 40 years or something. Yeah, no, that was actually very fun to think about, like with the flight technology and everything. So yeah, I'm actually bringing that back. I think another 6 months or so of doing like the bleak sci-fi stuff. But for me, it's also the weather. I don't know if that makes sense with you as well, but like I don't feel like making colorful RV pictures when it's like 2 degrees outside.
Oh, really?
Well, Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius and everything. I tend to just, my mood changes with the weather as well, and then yeah, I listen to different music, and then it just happens, you know.
I actually tend to like getting kind of, because I can't actually go outside. That's where I think my stuff tends to get the most kind of outdoorsy and whimsical, is in darkest winter, because I'm like, I just need to exist in this space a little bit.
Like a dream world.
Yeah. Like this would be my little escape. I love, can you put because I keep just randomly talking about your art. Can you like put the pictures up when I'm talking about them?
Oh yeah, I actually could, yeah. Yeah, why not? Why not?
Just because, like, I want to talk about how great the shadows across the no-fly zone, and, like, that kind of, like, that wash from, like, pink to orange in the sun areas, and, like, that purple in the shadows. That's all so incredible to me. How do you get that look? And how much of this is 2D? Is this all photo collage, or is this...
No, there's a little bit of Blender behind that, but that was actually, I think, a good year before I started to work with 3D, like to 90% of completing the image.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that's just it's a bit of messing around. First of all, like with Blender and trying to find the right sunlight angle to like get that. That's cool. What you can do, like with giant objects, is that you can cast part of it in sunlight and the other of it in shadow, and it makes it feel ginormous.
Oh yeah,
like instantly. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. Like color has always been something that just, it's more like a feel thing, and like just use some references.
Reference is so big.
Yeah, and I think that the thing with references is that you have to get out of your own way. Like, reference has nothing to do with skill in that, especially for color. I try to teach my students that as well. It's just like, you don't need to think, you just need to look at what the value of a white thing is in your reference image and copy that exactly to your image.
Yeah.
And do the same thing with color. And if you just do that and get out of your own way, like, you can have a very realistic color palette, but you need to stay like very true to whatever's happening in the reference image, if that makes sense.
Do you have classes available that like people can just go watch? Because I would love to hear you talk about, using color from reference images and stuff for, like, that sounds awesome.
I actually, like, I teach this a physical class. So
we'd have to come to Belgium.
Yeah, you'll have to come to Belgium. Yeah.
All right.
You can, that's okay. You can sleep over. That's
perfect.
Yeah, like for a full year.
I'll camp out in the RV.
Yeah, I bet my wife would love if I would go like, yeah, Ian's coming over. She'd be like, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, for like a year. Okay.
Oh,
yeah, and
you did do a cutaway of the teal camper.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Oh, that you even labeled it? Though. I love it.
Everything's labeled with that one. There was like crazy patience for some reason.
So like, I want to see you get this. They make the Petroville full-size camper. They actually cast all of it out of fiberglass. That would be... Man, you see those actual ships they made for Dune? So cool.
No, I haven't actually. I've seen a lot of stuff from the film, but not like the physical sets.
They made some like those
out.
the dragonfly or ornithocopter whatever things. Like they built one of those, or maybe two of those, like practically, which I think is very very cool. Yeah, that's the dream, man.
That is crazy. Yeah, that is absolutely crazy. But it totally works. Just the building of the thing, having the actors not to just act
Oh
as though
yeah,
there's something there. That's so crazy.
and you can feel it in the thing. It's like, oh, this is actually they're actually here in this actual environment.
And I've seen this analysis of the film of Dune and like why it feels so grounded. And there was this actually like I didn't even notice it until like they were talking about it. Is that there shouldn't be any camera movement in the film that a real camera wouldn't be able to make, because if you look at Avengers for sometimes like the camera swirls through and goes like it makes this really complex path that no real camera would ever be able to do. And apparently if you watch the film again, like no camera movements would be like defying the laws of gravity or any it's always just a regular camera movement filming something surreal. And I think like that's a very cool detail.
There's always so much environmental stuff kind of happening. Like the amount of times the subject is completely obscured by the environmental factors of like clouds and darkness and sand and lens flares and things like that. It's very much placing the camera right in the middle of this environment.
Yeah.
I actually don't mind when camera moves get a little bit out there. Just because we are kind of in this like postmodern cinematic thing, the idea of stuff being created through this kind of like mishmash of like I don't know. I kind of like it.
Yeah. I can see where you're coming from, man.
But no, I do. There's a lot to be said for trying to very much ground the camera. We just did. Nathan and I did a thing where we motion tracked all of these actual camera shakes, where we just hold the camera and we do a 3D track of that. And Nathan turned that into an add-on that you can overlay over your digital camera, so it's actually moving in the exact way that like it would have been if it were being held by like me, which has really made me enjoy like even just adding that on top of like a static shot, because like there's our brains are so good at identifying parallax that even if you're just moving like a couple millimeters, you can tell, because that's like it's part of balance.
Yeah.
And so that's been really nice for adding some realism. I used to just like back when render times were a lot slower, I'd render out a still background. It would just be a bunch of PNGs, and then I'd have one foreground element, like a tree in the foreground, just moving a couple pixels to try to trick like our brains into being like, oh yeah, this is definitely a full 3D scene. And it's so fun to just actually be able to render the whole thing out now. This time I'm like embarrassed because I'm basically rendering out a static shot, and I'm just rendering it out in 3D with like a little bit of camera shake on it, and it's just like all of this massive amounts of path tracing just for the tiniest little bit amount of parallax, but it makes a difference.
Yeah, it does though. Like sometimes you can see that they try to cut corners with like just having a still image and then adding perhaps like some particles on top of it or anything, but it's just the lack of having that micro parallax that you just talked about. Just you can sense it, like it feels uncanny just because there's no movement in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is crazy.
So what? Oh no, you go.
Yeah, no, just like a technical thing. Like, can you see my face still moving?
No, your face is not moved in like 15 minutes.
My face. All right.
Is my face moving?
Yeah, your face is moving. Let me just have a look. That's very weird though. Like it should be moving.
At one point, your face disappeared and it said, "Speeds are too slow. We took him away. We'll pray we give him back." And
that is weird. That is weird.
But now you're just frozen. But it's recording on both of our sides, so it should be.
Yeah, we'll see. Like if my face is frozen, like we'll see what it gives.
I am going to.
I'm happy that your face is still moving, so I'm actually happy that yeah.
I am I'm going to take one bite of muffin here, just because
Yeah, you just go ahead, man.
Oh,
Yeah, what time is it over there right now?
it's almost 1.
Ah, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And did you just had like your first coffee of the morning, or what's that?
I've been working nights.
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, so I got my booster.
Oh, yeah.
The vaccine booster.
The
and
booster.
It kicked my butt. I haven't had chills like that in forever, and it's kind of fun to be sick, knowing that it's just like that's part of the plan. Like, it's not going to be like a week and a half of it's just one day of like, all right, I suffer. But I was in the middle of so many projects I was excited about, and it's so weird when I get really sick because my brain just takes away my enthusiasm. And so I'm looking at all of these things. Like I had the whole house to myself. I'm like, I can just focus on projects all day today. This is like going to be a work day. And I sit there and just and I didn't care about anything. I was looking at stuff I was working on. I'm like, this does absolutely nothing. I just sat on a couch and like watched South Park and Mystery Men all day. And it's always weird to me that there's just a switch in some part of my brain where that can be turned off. Like, yeah, you don't have motivation anymore. You don't care about any of this. You're just going to sit on a couch and not feel any guilt at all. I'm like, what if that gets flipped for reasons other than flu? But as of like yesterday, suddenly the switch was flipped again. And I was like, oh, I gotta go do all of this stuff. And I ended up going to bed later than I meant to, just because I had all of my enthusiasm back.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It was silly.
But that's kind of like, that's weird though. Like you take it for granted. I at least I think I do.
Yeah. It's just like
I like to work, and I normally have no problems with energy, but sometimes I do. Like I've had some troubles for the past few months with the kids and everything, like some really terrible sleep stuff. So that's like a really weird experience, like that you don't want to do something. I have a lot. It's nice to hear, that I'm kind of jealous that you can sit down and just watch South Park all day. but that's actually, that's very healthy, because I keep forcing myself, like I'm like, no, I must do the work, and then I'm lying down just scrolling my phone, but not really being content with where I'm lying, because I'm not allowing myself to rest.
Well, that's where I'm at.
So
all the time, and that's where it was so weird to like kind of have these flu symptoms and to actually just be like, oh, I'm not going to even, because so many of us are in that state where it's like we never let ourselves turn off, even in those times where like we're still kind of scrolling and taking in input and processing and all of that. And
it's like this thing haunting me, like lying down and I'm scrolling. Like I'm a 9gagger, you know 9gag.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm doing that, and then there's this part in me. It's like I could be reading up on references, and I'm like, okay, go on, let's read some airplane stuff now, or something, let's read about the Northern Bomb Site once more, and
I think
yeah.
Because my fiance Caitlin, she gives herself a hard time because she does that too sometimes. She's like, I just sat and I just scrolled through like my phone for like 40 minutes, and I think like we expect such constant productivity all the time.
Yeah.
That I think we use our phones now for like that's our only time for like turning off. And so I think it's I think maybe the fact that it is just scrolling through a phone isn't maybe the healthiest way to express that, but I think that time is actually important, and I think we don't give it to ourselves enough.
No, yeah.
I know.
Right.
I don't. I'm always like, I just wasted that half hour. It's like, no, you didn't. You just existed for half an hour. That's okay.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's. I think that's very, very true what you say. It's almost like we have this guilt with doing nothing, but like actually doing nothing, not like still catching up on TV shows or I mean just like going outside and just, I don't know, watch grass or whatever you do when you go outside,
I used to go.
I've got some chickens in the garden, so that's like a
You
very
got
zen
chickens?
activity to. Yeah, man, I've got chickens.
Wow, you got Belgian chickens. That is
Belgian chickens.
Belgian
Yeah.
chickens.
Yeah.
Do they know
actually
they're
not that
Belgian?
different from American chickens.
Really?
I'm pretty sure they do. Yeah. Yeah. Because of the language,
Yeah.
I talk Dutch to them.
Yeah. I always thought it was wild when like people like are speaking other languages to their pets. I'm like, that's such a sophisticated pet. That dog can speak French. Yeah,
Yeah.
I used to walk all the time. Like that was my cigarette break. Or like I would, for 4 times a day, I just go out for a little walk along the streets. But now I live out in the country where there's no sidewalks and people zip up and down at like 50 miles an hour. Like
Yeah.
it's not safe or comfortable. Because I know it's just a matter of time until somebody glances down at their phone and just like destroys me. So I do miss that, and I think getting that blood pumping was good for me emotionally too. I don't take those breaks anymore, and I think it's been not great for me.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, like it's sometimes I almost forget like I have a body. you know, I'm just like this brain with flesh dangling from, it's like a weird thing what you have when your primary passion thing is sitting behind a computer for an entire day.
Yeah, I used to be a lot better at every like 20 minutes I'd get up and do like 100 jumping jacks or like a bunch of push-ups and stuff. But I mean, the last couple of years with like the pandemic, or maybe it's just, getting older, the thought of like sitting here, hey, you're moving again.
Yeah, I just got a notice that my webcam deconnected. So, yeah, that's awesome. We can
Hey!
do the last part with a moving face again.
But yeah, the thought of sitting here and then like, oh, I'm gonna get down and do like 50 push-ups. I'm like, oh, I just never am feeling like that's good anymore. Because there's half the time I work out, my body releases the good chemicals, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, that feels pretty good. I feel like a living human. And the other half of the time, I'm like, I just kind of feel like puking now. And it used to be kind of 50-50, and now I'm just always kind of feel like puking a little bit. And I think it could be hydration. I think I've kind of slipped into not being great at hydrating myself, so I'm trying to be better about that.
Yeah, I'm actively trying that as well, like trying to get in plenty of water and everything. No, I've never been like a very sporty type, and I think I've tried 5 times already, like to really get into running.
Oh, that's a hard one.
It is, and I'm like, yeah, this is great, yeah. But no, like the only thing that I can consistently keep doing is sort of like this arbitrary weightlifting, like not even bodybuilding or something, but just like trying to pick up a heavy thing and putting it back down a few meters.
Oh yeah.
Ahead, and that's the only thing that I can keep myself doing.
I've got
for longer
some little
periods of time,
dumbbells
so-
over there. I haven't touched them in weeks. I should.
Oh, I haven't as well. Like since January.
It's a hard time of the year.
I've been very busy with work.
Yeah. Oh well.
I also, I go through periods like where sometimes I'm like this very proactive. No, well, not proactive. I'm like I have this sort of like this aggression, not as in like I'm angry aggression, but like this. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then other times I'm like, I just want comfort and I want a blanket now.
I've been in the comfort zone for a minute myself. So did you say this is your first episode?
Yeah, the first one, man.
Wow. Okay. So we gotta do something contentious. We've gotta like have a controversy so that it'll be in the news.
Oh man,
You
don't get me canceled.
We
first
gotta get
episode.
you canceled. What's your most contentious opinion?
Nah, yeah. You know what? Let's
We build
not
to
dive
that.
into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to do that on like your
another
5th episode so
and-
they can look back at the previous ones once you are canceled.
Yeah.
And okay. That's
Yeah,
smart.
people can see like, oh yeah, I can see where his downfall came from. It's like- He was influenced by Ian Hubert.
Yeah. We're all gonna get.
Yeah.
We'll all be canceled. It'll be good. Good for our careers.
It is a crazy. I'm not going to go into depths, because like I really don't want to spark discussions in it, but it's like a crazy time where the censoring and everything, it's getting like to a very, very weird degree.
It can be very intense.
And I think especially like the amount of value being attributed by someone being offended by something is very weird, like how it actually became like this valid thing to act upon, or to force others to act upon, simply by having like the inherent feeling, I don't like what you did there, so I'm going to court and I'll sue you.
I think there's too little value placed on good faith acting. Like if somebody's like heart is in the right place, I think that means a lot. Because we all
absolutely.
I don't know. We all are gonna make mistakes. We're all gonna do something at some point that should cancel us. And so the understanding that like none of us are we're all going to mess up. It'll all be public. Everything we do now is in this giant like domain, and the impulse to pretend as if like we never could, I think is too big of a demand, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, look at us. Like the first conversation we're having, like the first live conversation, is gonna be recorded, is being recorded, and we'll be up there for everyone to watch. So, but that's that's how it works, of course. But still, yeah, you're right. It's have a bit of faith in people, or
ideally,
not even that. It's also like just try to tolerate, Yeah,
it's
interesting. That's
good. I don't mind the impulse of just like, hey, we're trying to we're just really trying to be aware of language and how it kind of like affects people. I think that's a very good awareness, kind of the power of language and all of that. Just like every word has that power, and so sometimes you have to be like, yeah, there's some. I don't know. You can't always watch everything that you say from every single angle. Anyways, we probably don't need to get into our hot takes on cancel culture.
No, but I know what you mean. Like there has to be some margin on saying something and like making a mistake even, or sometimes you just when you get angry, like you say something very harsh instead of like there's some truth to it, but you make it as harsh and as cutting as it can possibly be. Humans are very good in that, like making something to be as sharp and as cutting.
I was like, did you actually
as it can humanly be.
Mean that? It's like, I sure felt like I meant it at the time. It's like, no, I didn't.
Yeah, but it's so fleeting, So, but it's a weird time. But anyways, man, I'm really happy that we had this opportunity to have a proper conversation.
Yes.
And I would love to set another episode somewhere in the future, and perhaps like even do like a little collaboration thing here or something.
That would be very fun.
Yeah, I would love to do that. That would be really cool, and I would love to learn something about your video editing as well. With the lazy tutorials.
Oh, like just the way those were edited, or?
Yeah, because I think one of the main like obviously like they're very knowledgeable, but I think what really made them stick with people is just like the pacing and the humor in it, and it's just like. I've showed them to my students, and they were laughing so loud.
Oh, that's good.
Then they were asking questions. But that's what you want. You're not just showing them a guy doing like breathing into the microphone, like, and then you hear the mouse clicking, and you just click, and then They were so they were fun to watch. But they were also sparking so many ideas, So
even that was my big goal. Was even more than like instructing people on how to do a thing. I was trying to inspire that feeling of like, oh, I can do that thing, which I think is like the most important actually. Like, because when you sit down to work with Blender, it's like confusing, and there's this immediate sense of like kind of being overwhelmed when you're trying anything, or you're opening a new panel and it's like, oh geez, there's 200 options for setting up a cloth sim. It's like, don't worry about all of those like options, just tweak these ones and you'll have a result. And then if you want, you can be like, oh, I want a different result, and you'll find a value to go, okay, I think that one would probably do the thing. But like that thing of getting past that like kind of shell shocked like, whoa, there's too many buttons, and kind of dangling ideally like, hey, here's a result, we just made it in like a minute, you just saw how we did it, you could do that. And like once that's kind of the goal, I feel like ideally, once you're already made kind of the half-assed thing, then you look at it and you go, oh, how could I make that better? And that's where you kind of like end up in the rest of it. So that was kind of the secret goal of a lot of the videos, was just to get that hook in.
Yeah, and I think it worked, man. Like it actually worked. Those were really they changed a lot of stuff that I did, like really a lot of stuff. And I'm sure I'm sure there are thousands more people that are like that actually changed the way they approached 3D by just watching those 60 seconds clips.
That's fun. I stopped doing them, not even like really on purpose. There was I found so many people. I was making them originally for people who'd already used Blender for a while, so I wasn't introducing how to do stuff. I would just kind of be like, hey, do this and this and this. But so many people were saying they were learning Blender from scratch using them that I was like, that would be very frustrating. So I kept trying to like make it and edit it so that you could kind of do it if you'd never used Blender before, which was a lot to fit into like a 1-minute tutorial. And also just like, I don't know, I kept getting too many followers on YouTube and it stressed me out. I was like, there's nothing I can make that can justify putting it out there for 500,000 people. And also just the realization that there's 10 million. I started making them in a vacuum. I hadn't really watched a lot of like video tutorials, and the realization there's a whole community, there's a whole culture of Blender tutorials out there, and I always felt like I was stepping on somebody's toes if like somebody else had made a tutorial that like covered that stuff. And so all of that combined just kind of meant that I was like, I don't know. It was easier when I was kind of oblivious and I didn't think anybody was actually gonna watch them. But every once in a while, if there's something like IK rigging that like was really big for me, and I'm like, I want to just hopefully this might be as big for somebody else as it is for me.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward that there is the slightest possibility that there will be another lazy tutorial somewhere in the future.
I should. I want to.
Yeah, you should do. I think a lot of people will be very happy to see that. And it's just, it's not having there's a lot of video tutorials out there, but I think, there's like two types of tutorials. Like one that will learn you how to think about certain approaches, and one that will just be like very specific, how to model mug. And then it's like this mug, this ear, polygons, click, and it's just like, oh yeah, now I have a mug, but what now? And then now I need a table, and then you watch a tutorial on the table. But it's really cool how you can like present information in such a way that will actually have people thinking about things and thinking about their own methods and everything. Yeah, I think there's a lot of power in that.
Cool. Well, thank you.
And the silly humor really makes it stick,
That was always the fun part. I was always like, oh no, all the other ones are funny. This one isn't funny. But then by the time I'm done doing the voiceover, like, it's just I can't help but put like all of the stuff in there. The thing I'm proudest of with the tutorials was actually, it was from the second city modeling, or like modeling a building, and I had it like set on like a hill.
I know which one. Yeah,
and just
I've seen them
all
man.
The people who did the tutorial put their city on a hill, which is like, that was like my biggest feeling of like, that was the idea I actually wanted to put out there, because when you put something on a hill, it forces all of these design decisions for like, how does everything deal with like being on a hill. You have a doorway and you have a sloped sidewalk. How do you have the stoop so that it justifies that? Because especially in a CG environment, it's so easy to just put an asset in the middle of an infinite plane, and you're like, there we go. So as soon as you're like, nope, it's a warbling whatever thing.
Yeah.
And so that was very fun. Like just
man.
seeing people who try to do that, but it's yeah. That was the secret thing of the whole video was hills. Secretly hill tutorial. I think my brain's going a little bit. I apologize.
That's all right, man. That's all right. No, man. I think we'll slowly wrap things up here because I have 2 hours of recording time with this piece of software for now.
Oh, we've got 10 minutes left.
So
wow.
Yeah, we've got 10 minutes left. Like slowly, we can slowly wrap things up. We can do like the no, you hang up.
Now you.
No, you hang.
Well, I am down if you want to edit out half of it. Just keep the gold, man. Then we both sound so smart. Get rid of all the parts where we sound so dumb, and it's like, wow, those guys are sharp.
I can edit stuff in such a way I can get you canceled right away.
Oh, please do.
No, I don't think I will edit too much out. It's. I think it's nice to just have a raw conversation. For the most part, we'll see. How everything's received and everything. I'm not really sure where to take it just yet. I'm just trying to apply like the whole just get started and see where it goes method, because I tend to overanalyze a lot and walk around with an idea very long instead of acting on it. So this was kind of like my try to just dive in, and we'll see where it goes and everything, and just adjust along the way. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, and I love the emphasis on design, or at least that's how you pitched it to me. Because it's so important, and I feel like it's kind of underappreciated in the CG. Or what actually is the subject of this podcast?
Yeah, that's a good thing. For me, it is actually like about. There's so much stuff out there. That's my Patreon is all about this as well. And there's just so much technical information out there, like how to set up software, and like how textures work. And there's so much information out there, but like how to actually design something, or like the thought process behind it. There's so little good material on it. And I'm not saying that my stuff is good or anything. It's just like I'm trying to figure out for myself as well. But I thought, like, why not start documenting that journey of like trying to figure out like why or how to do something, like how to make something look the way it looks. And I think especially with stuff being easier and easier, like creating a realistic image, especially with Unreal Engine and everything, and like the Quixel bridge assets and stuff, becomes so much easier to make a good realistic image, that I think design is more important than ever. Like it's yeah.
That's how we should have started the podcast.
I can paste that into the beginning.
That's such a good. I want to keep talking about that for the next 2 hours, because it's totally true. It's like once you can photorealistically render basically anything you can think of, it becomes the challenge of what can you think of? And when you can sample from real life and scan and like source, and probably in the next 6 months use AI to auto-generate a model of anything, being able to have all of those assets doesn't matter anymore. Like it's about how are they combined and how they kind of fit together. I'm so jealous because on Twitter there's this AI images account, and I don't know how much curating and processing and like how it works really, but the colors and the values in the images it generates, I am so jealous of. It's the color palettes and the richness. I'm like, these are all better than anything I've ever done, and they're being like, I think they're being sampled from Monet's or whatever, but
yeah, most likely, yeah.
But it's still very inspiring just to like kind of see, because usually the rest of the image is like random warbly dog heads or whatever, but like the color values and stuff from whatever it's sampling it from are just so inspiring, and it's making me realize like I really haven't given enough credence to the value of a proper color palette.
Yeah, but it's a subject in itself, right? Like working with color and like trying to understand it to me, it's like the most crazy thing is the relationship colors have within, like, in one palette, which makes them work or make them vibrant or not. Like not one color in specific, but just like the weird combinations, and it's a weird subject.
And I don't understand
I think I think it's even more elusive than design. Like, I think that's why it's not being covered as much as it should, because it's very elusive, right? Design, like, what do you even do? Because you can do everything. You can really do everything. Like, a technical tutorial is, well, easy isn't the right word, but it's straightforward, because, like, either it works or it doesn't. But design and color is like this super arbitrary thing sometimes. And that's what I'm trying to teach with my Patreon as well, is like to break the arbitrary design decision loop that a lot of people are stuck in. Like, let's try and break things down by function and try to build stuff up from there. Like, that's what we're doing every week now. So yeah, like, ideally in the future, I guess this podcast can be catered more towards that, but I think first and foremost it's nice just to have some conversations with people, like, not too forced, not too scripted or anything, not have it to be like an interview. Like, tell me, Mr. Hubert, what is your stance on the color yellow?
I'm against it. I just did some work. Literally, it's a gig coming out maybe tomorrow, where the art design was just, they didn't want any like shades of blue, and I had like one little green light in the background, and I looked at it post their final grade, and they'd completely and utterly desaturated. It's just this gray square in the background of the render now. It was like only shades of like yellow and red, and I very much admired that, like, that stringent of like an intense like rule for like the visual style. It's a project I'm doing with the folks who made Prospect. They're trying to pitch their next thing, and so it's like a lot of space stuff, but they're very specific about their color palettes. To a degree, I very much am impressed by. No blues.
That is a weird decision, though. Like, that's almost like a controversial decision.
It
like,
is. I had a hard time maneuvering within that, because I'm always like, that's part of the compositional balance to me, is like the warms and the cools, the brights and the darks, and to just be like, everything's kind of warm. I was like, I don't know how to maneuver, and it did have to make me rethink the way I would deal with compositions and stuff. And I kept trying to sneak it in, and they kept being like, we see you. I'd have like a blue bounce off of like a distant moon, and they're like,
I see what you did there, Mr. Hubert.
But yeah, the final result was like, it doesn't feel as much like my stuff as like, and I liked that. It was very much, I was working within their world. I did think that was cool. We have a minute.
That is cool, though. Yeah, the restrictions. Yeah. We have. We have like 1 minute left.
Oh yeah. Oh, we have 2 minutes. Never mind.
2 minutes. Okay.
Well then.
Yeah. You know what? Let's wrap things up so we have like a package, you know, and it doesn't just cut out. Well, you know, that's like, yeah, that was Ian.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm sure he's all right.
He's probably still fine.
Yeah.
No, this was a blast.
Man, it was a pleasure.
It's so good to get to know you a bit better. I'd love to pick your brain at some point about just how you assembled all of these libraries of visual ideas, and how you like find your reference, and how you mix it with like other stuff, because your brain is just so good at that. But maybe we save that for another day.
Yeah, what we can do, because there's also like some more specific stuff I would like to get in with you. Like, why not do like a few episodes in the future where we'll like talk about specific subjects, you know?
That would be great.
References in general, or design references, or color palettes, or that would be a great idea, man.
I would love to talk about color forever. I'm into it now. I'm going through I'm obsessed with color right now because I know I don't understand it, and you do.
Yeah, well, to like a little degree, I think there's so much to learn, man. But anyways, like we've got 30 seconds left, so yeah. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much.
You too. Thanks for having me.
I wish I could shake your hand or something. Yeah, let's do like
through the world. We're making a world handshake.
All right, so I really hope you enjoyed the first podcast episode. We had a myriad of technical issues that we ran into during the process, including my face freezing, the audio cutting out 2 minutes before the end and everything. But also sorry for my clogged nose, heavy microphone breathing that we had going on throughout the entire podcast. I hope you're into some ASMR shit. If you like it, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and if you want, support me on Patreon, where you will get a week early access to all podcast episodes, also a design video every single week, and some other cool snippets. So thanks. Cheers.